All right, so let's talk about the content browser and how to keep all your files organized, because as soon as we start making bigger and bigger scenes, like open worlds, it can get really complicated really fast. So first things first, everything in our project is going to exist under a content folder. So this is the same for every project that you create. So this bottom window is the content browser. By default, you might have this pop-up content browser by hitting Control and space. But you're going to use this constantly, so definitely dock this in your layout. You can also open 2 at the same time by going to Content Browser, and you can open up to 4 at the same time, which can be nice if you need to drag things into your scene from different folders. But the single button you should be pressing all the time is the Save All button. A big difference between Unreal and traditional 3D softwares is that every object in your scene is saved to its own file, its own .uasset file, usually. So you need to make sure every individual file is being saved as often as possible. Unreal is definitely going to crash at some point, and probably when you least expect it, so it's always good to save everything in your scene as often as possible. But if there's certain files that you don't want to commit, you can just uncheck these single files, but save what you know you want to keep, because I guarantee Unreal is going to crash on you. We also have this import button where you can import FBX files, .obj files, or any image files. It's also worth knowing that you can't import .uasset files. If you have a .uasset file and you want to bring it into your scene, just copy the path to your content folder. You swap over to your Windows Explorer, just navigate inside your content folder and find a place to paste it. Here you can see this .uasset file, and you'll have the same exact folder structure. It's just you won't be able to see any .uassets when hitting this import button, so keep that in mind. And lastly, we have this add button. This is the same exact menu that will pop up if you right-click anywhere inside the content browser, and this is how you'll create new assets in your scene, whether it's a material or a level. This can be pretty hard to navigate, so you can also type in whatever you're looking for. Like you can type in level sequence if you want to create a new timeline. Or at the top here, you have options to import. You can add features or different content packs, which the most useful are the first person, third person, or vehicle packs. And if you go to content, you can also import starter content, which will give you some materials and different particle effects if you want to see a lot of different examples of how materials are set up in Unreal. Beyond that, we also have our Quixel Bridge menu. So if you hit add Quixel content, it'll pop open Bridge, where you can find any Quixel assets that you want to bring into your scene. But now let's talk about the next most important thing, which is keeping your content browser organized. So the number one rule of the content browser, the only thing you have to remember here is we want to keep our content browser organized, and we can do that by making the names of everything searchable. So like I said, we start with our content folder, and then after that, we want to create a project folder underneath that. So in this case, we have our UEVFX 101 project. Underneath that, we want to start creating our subfolders. And I like to keep things simple, so I just create 3 folders for every project. And that starts with assets, levels, and sequences. Assets will store all of the geometry and materials, and we'll end up storing the assets that we import or what we create in the engine. The levels are where we're going to store our maps or our environments. And under sequences is where we'll store everything for animation and when using sequencer and movie render queue. As soon as you start importing Quixel Megascans, there'll be a Megascans folder by default, so that comes in, as well as an ms_presets folder where it'll store all of the master materials. So if we hop back into Unreal Engine, we can see exactly that. We have our UEVFX 101, and I like to always set a color on this. This one's sort of a lime green, but you can just right click and set color to something really noticeable like red or purple or just a very saturated color. You can quickly identify it in the drop down here or from your main menu. Right now we have some really large icons, so if I just place my cursor inside of the content browser and hit the control key and I scroll down on my mouse wheel, it'll make these a lot smaller. And when we have these smaller icons, we'll actually get a label of everything that we create. So if I navigate in here, right now we just have folders. You can see we have blueprints, we have material instances, we have textures. And this makes it really obvious what types of assets we have inside of here. Now, like I said earlier, the way we organize the content browser is by making everything searchable now that we have this search bar that we have right here. So that's why the folder structure doesn't matter quite as much. The idea is we'll start at the content browser here, and we could type in any single asset that we want. Like we know we have ceiling tiles here, and now all of the related assets are going to show up underneath. The materials, the static meshes, and the textures. And the reason why we want to name everything in this way is so that whenever we have these drop downs here, like let's say I want to assign a different material to our sphere here, I could just click on this drop down, and now all of those relevant materials are going to show up right next to one another. So it's really easy to stay organized. Now you don't just have to search the name of objects, you can also search type of object. Like we know we have levels. If we type in levels, we can see that it will also search based on the asset type. There's also this little drop down here where we can add filters, so we can filter by levels, textures, static meshes, or materials, or anything else underneath. But the ones you see at the top are going to be the most common. And the way we can keep every asset in our scene searchable is by following a really simple naming convention based on our asset types. So if we were importing a brick wall, these are the types of assets that we would create based on that brick wall. So we know exactly what we need to search, and then all of the relevant data comes underneath. And this is the naming convention that I found is the easiest to follow. We're just naming it by prefix, as in the type of actor, then the name of the asset, a simple descriptor to be specific in case we have different variations of the same asset, and a number at the end. Again, just another way to keep all of our assets separated and organized. The prefixes are just acronyms for the different asset types. So we can have material instances, we can have SM for static mesh, we could have SKM for a skeletal mesh, which are our characters, or we could have BP for blueprint. This is all based off of the Unreal Engine's recommended asset naming conventions. You can find a complete list on the recommended asset naming conventions documentation page, but you really just have to know the few at the top, which are materials, material instances, skeletal mesh, static mesh, textures, and blueprints. So when I was getting started, I would just keep this on a second monitor and just hit Control F if there was ever one I wasn't sure about. But in the end, you're only using a couple of these at a time, and it's fine if they don't match exactly. You just want to be consistent across your entire project.